Welcome to Every Step Podcast. I'm Christina Weston.
And I'm Judith Beck.
Every Step is the podcast where career and life meet.
Hi, everybody. It's so good to be here for our second episode. And we've got some great topics today, Christina. And we also have our first pop-in guest with Luke Farr from The Luke Farr Show, all the way from New Zealand. Thanks, Luke, for coming.
We need to have the applause machine. Yay.
Exactly.
Insert canned laughter.
I need to find that. I need to find something to do that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we're going to get right into it because we've got so many topics to cover in the last couple of weeks that have hit the airway. And one of them is about, I don't know, Luke, if you know who this person is, but there's a politician by the name of Barnaby Joyce here. And he says that his late night lie down, in other words, someone took a picture of him on their phone as he came out of a restaurant, and he had a little lie down on the footpath. And
in the subject of many a meme.
And he says it was a big mistake, and he blames mixing medication with alcohol. Boy, I don't know how many times I've done that over my life, right, Christina? That's an excuse we can use. Anyway.
He's had a bottle of champagne and some Valium, clearly. I've just looked at the video.
Exactly right. Well, the issue here is, how does your brand kill your career? Like something like this, where here's a person who's in the public eye, and he's supposed to be someone. Politicians and CEOs and senior people are supposed to be people we look up to and we respect. And when this happens, is this going to kill a career? Or in the case of Barnaby, probably not, because politicians seem to get away with a lot of things. But brand is very important these days when everything is being videoed. I mean, what do you guys think?
I think there's two sets of rules, one set of rules for politicians and another set of rules for all the rest of us. If he was a senior executive, if he was running a big business and was high profile and somebody took a photograph of that, he probably wouldn't have a job right now. Or he would be, there wouldn't be people standing around saying, oh, we need to look at his private life. Gee, maybe there's something else going on. No, there'd be none of that. It'd be like, I'm sorry. You don't drink, you don't behave like that. You're in the public eye. You've got to be on, you've got to be presentable, respectable the entire time. There is no on off. There's no after hours when you're a high profile business person.
Yeah, absolutely. Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, that's interesting. The element there, at the end of the day, there shouldn't be two sets of rules, right? I mean, it just, like you said, it seems like politicians can sort of get away with murder. However, I think when you look at anyone with credentials like that and of a high status needs to hold themselves accountable a lot more so than, I guess I don't want to sound prejudiced here, but any Joe Blogs who's not in the public eye or in media can have a lie down, get away with it, and no one thinks anything of it. But they're both fundamentally doing the same things. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, if he actually mixed alcohol with some prescription medication and is semi-unconscious or potentially maybe about to have a heart attack, I mean, he's physically compromised there, if you know what I mean. So. But then the next line of that is saying, well, if you're going to want to get inebriated and intoxicated to that level, do it behind closed doors because you do have a responsibility to maintain and you are a public figure.
Yeah, and I think there's another angle to this story in that his workplace had only just closed. So he'd only just left Parliament. He'd only just left his workplace, or not long left his workplace.
Well, maybe he had some champers before he left.
Well, maybe.
Well, me, I've said this over and over again throughout the years. The reality is that work is work. And people, when they have functions and they provide alcohol and people don't get the idea that they shouldn't get drunk at a work function or at the office, then you do kind of question their intellect, because I mean, you really got to do everything these days as if you're being watched.
Well, you are.
Through a lens.
With social media now, you are.
That's exactly right. And people are waiting behind the scenes, especially people who are high profile, to catch you out. And so if you don't look at that from the point of view of, I need to behave myself until I'm in my own home where I can close the door, I can drink whatever I want, if that's the case. But when you're in public, you got to be careful, whether you're a politician or whether you're in a career, high profile or not, because over the years I've seen many people kill their career and their brand because they've gotten drunk at a function, they've said the wrong things, they've insulted somebody, whatever the case may be. It doesn't mix. Alcohol and career doesn't mix. You really got to watch yourself.
And I think to Luke's point, if you're going for a job and you've been a party person and there's a whole bunch of stuff about you having a wild time on social media, people are going to see that. So that's going to impact your brand when you're going for a job, going for a promotion. And you could just be a ordinary person like us, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And on your point earlier, and it does seem to be that they get a unique set of rules, these politicians. I mean, even our mayor here in Wellington, Tory Whanau, who was all over the media, she walked out on her table bill, didn't pay, and then tried to take the bottle of wine, or tried saying things to the waiter such as, do you know who I am type thing. I mean, that type of behavior. I mean, she's still in that role, but I mean, if that was to happen, like you said, to any executive, they'd be fired the next day.
They'd be fired.
I mean, she at least went back the next day and paid for it and said sorry, but then there were just a number of events, her just obviously constantly drinking, but then apologizing, and then all of the other councillors around her were saying, oh yeah, well, we're all heavy drinkers, and sort of justified it. And I was just like, she's the mayor of our city and she's getting away with this. You wouldn't get away with it in the corporate world. You'd be gone.
No, exactly right. And also too, why are taxpayers responsible for the alcohol of politicians?
Exactly.
At the end of the day,
that's a good point.
That's true. At the end of the day, we're paying for their alcohol, and so really, I don't even know why it should even be provided. In Australia, they've raised the tax on alcohol again. So maybe that's their way of contributing.
Maybe.
That's a creative thought there, Judith. I didn't think of that angle, but you could be right.
And
you are in sales. You really sold that.
If only.
Oh my God, I know. It's unbelievable.
If only.
Well, okay. Well, no, that's good. I think we've covered that one. Now, our next topic is about young managers. So there's a lot of young managers out there who are in their early 20s who have stated that they feel that they need to hide their age because they've got people reporting to them that are boomers, that are a lot older than they are. So should a young manager feel the need to hide their age, and why?
Confession time. When I was a young executive coming through the ranks, I actually went out and bought plain glass. I didn't have vision problems, but I went out and got glasses to make myself look older than I was.
Wow.
So I was early 20s. I just finished financial planning diploma. I was going out and seeing clients, and I was like, early mid 20s. I was so young. And I actually felt it then that I was going to struggle to be taken seriously because I was so young. So I didn't tell anybody my age, but I clearly looked really young. And I'm going back quite a few decades now.
Yeah. So how many years ago was that, and how old are you now? No, I'm just
not saying. And look, and you raise a very, very good point. I think it works at both ends of the spectrum. I think there are challenges for for some people that are young and bright and have got the EQ and are managing people, and they're going to intimidate people that are older and think that they've done more service and they're more deserving. So I think there's that young end of the spectrum, but there's equally people at the older end of the spectrum that have a lot of experience, a lot of maturity, and there's that judgment against them because they're too old. So at our end of the spectrum, we're doing a whole bunch of things to try and look younger. You know, women and men are getting Botox and fillers to look younger. And it's not just women. There are a lot of executive males and people in careers that are having those sorts of procedures done.
Yeah, I'm due for my Botox
even eye surgery to look younger. So, and this is not gender specific here. So there's people at the other end of the spectrum that want to stay relevant and not appear old, that are doing a whole bunch of things, coloring hair, you know.
Well, you should watch the movie The Intern. That's a good one if you're a young manager, because that's a perfect example of how it works. And I was a young manager too in my early 20s. And I think if I was giving anybody advice that are young managers, the thing I would say is that there are benefits that you can gather from the older people who are reporting to you. So gather their wisdom, get them involved. I think what happens is that if older employees sometimes think, why did you get that job over me? Why did you're only in your 20s and I'm in my 30s or 40s or whatever, and why did you get that job? So that's not your fault that you got their job. It's their fault that they didn't get the job because they've obviously done something. And the thing is in your teams, you got to nip it in the bud with those people who are not on your bus. Because if you can't get them on your bus, they're going to cause you problems. And you have to try to do something to win them over, as far as letting them know that you have certain skills that you can help them with, and they have certain skills, and that you're working together as a team. But don't let them intimidate you. And you've got an open communication right away. Otherwise, it will drag on.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting though? I mean, yeah, young people wanting to look old and old people wanting to look young. But I think there's the perception versus reality, and the perception being that obviously the seasoned veteran is going to be far more experienced than the young associate coming on in, but obviously role dependent here and industry dependent. But I think tracking back into looking at actually the deliverables of the role, and we shouldn't just assume that just because they're young, they are not going to know as much. I mean, there are elements there. I mean, people heading towards their end of their careers, the debate there is, well, are they as passionate? Are they as innovative? Are they as hungry to seek out new subject matters? I mean, there could be a young candidate coming through who is absolutely a weapon, pretty much, and a wizard. And we can't just discount that because, oh, no, they're only 25.
Exactly.
It's like, so therefore age to me doesn't really matter. It's the substance and quality you're bringing to the table. I don't really look at age.
And no, I wish everybody thought that way, because that's the way it should be. It should be around your passion, your skills, your competence.
Yeah.
And age shouldn't be relevant, but unfortunately, society, culture.
It is, but I think I think that's slowly. Well, I hope it is slowly changing, because I do think that is more the boomer and older generation thought process.
Yeah, and it's also too, they'd be thinking the problem, but even way back when, like even when I was the first manager in my 20s, I had the same issues with the older people. So it's more the people who think that they lost something and you got something, and they don't think it was fair. And that's where
that's always going to happen in corporate.
It's always going to happen. And to your point, Luke, the reality is, I remember at that time, I got the job. I remember I got the job because of passion and energy and knowledge of in a certain area that those people didn't have, but they had knowledge that I didn't have. They had maturity and life skills and things like that I could learn from them, which is always going to be the case when you're younger and older. But the younger managers coming, they are so much farther ahead in technology that they can really help the older ones come up to speed in technology and processes and new ways of thinking that the older ones haven't even thought of yet. So they actually can help each other if they try, if they just open up about, open the communication. But it's hard to change someone who's got a bee in their bonnet. So if you got somebody in your team who's got a bee in their bonnet and they think they've been done harshly or whatever, you really got to nip that in the bud.
Yeah.
In your first few months of being a manager, a young manager, you got to nip that in the bud and have that conversation with that person so they don't try to derail your journey. And, you can spend a lot of time trying to sort people out like that. And that's a waste of time. You got to nip it in the bud and get some help. Get some help from an advocate or a mentor who's outside the process so that you can bounce ideas off of while you're going through that new journey as a manager.
I think you hit the nail on the head there, Judith.
Absolutely.
I think it's around having the conversations, and it's about being intentional about that. So I think the worst thing anybody could do is just realize it's happening and go into avoidance and just go, oh, they're not doing whatever it is that I'm asking them to do, or they're not being a team player because they are judging me because of my age. That's the worst thing you can do. The best thing you can do, and I've been in this situation. I was a young senior executive. I came into teams in corporate environments where the people were a lot older. And initially they were judging me, but over time, and it was because I put the time into getting to know them, getting to respect them, getting to understand their skills. There's a lot of corporate memory with people that have got seniority, and just leveraging that and embracing that and celebrating that. But you've got to have the conversation. You've got to engage them. You can't do it via email. You can't do it via text. You can't do it any other way. You've got to actually sit down and have conversations. So work on your emotional intelligence skills if that's what's going on for you.
Because they're going to have all the skills of the new job, but as a new manager, they won't have the skills of managing people. And that's what's going to be different for them going into that role. And then the other thing is that they do need to learn how to manage older people, because they do need to make sure that when I say older people, anybody in their team, they need to, the communication style of how to get people on board and to deal with them needs to be the same and not condescending. So if someone who's older doesn't know something, you, as a young manager, the worst thing you could do would be to come across as condescending, like, what's wrong with you? Why don't you know that? Because that's going to stick with them for a long time. And that's going to cause, so as a manager, you got to do what's required, and that's manage the process, manage the personalities, manage the behaviors, everything that comes along. And that's not easy to do. And as a first-time manager, you really do need to make sure that you have some help in your corner, and don't be afraid to ask people. Get somebody outside your current organization who's had a lot of management experience to guide you when you need it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Very true.
Now,
Based on that age-related one, just quickly though, I feel as though, like, industry dependent, like if I was to look at like lawyers, accountants, or doctors, and I had two in each room that were doing fundamentally the exact same role and the same JD job description, but one's 25 and one's 60. For a lawyer, accountant, and a doctor, I'm definitely going to go for the older. I'm choosing the older one.
absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, that's where age does come into it. I'm like, well, you're both doing the same role, but man, you've just done more heart surgeries than this guy.
Well, okay, here's a question. Would you go for because for me, let's say a doctor, the heart surgeon, you wouldn't go for the youngest one because they haven't had enough heart surgeries. You might not go for the oldest one because maybe they're not up to date on the new technology.
That's exactly. I'd be going for someone in there. I've just gone through this process with my mum. My mum's had a neurologist that she's been seeing, and she's seen different people at different ends of the age spectrum. And she's now found somebody who's in his 40s, I think. And I went, oh, perfect. Like, you've got someone that's got a bit of experience, but they're at the peak of their career. They're still learning. They're still engaged. They're looking at you holistically. They're not looking at things in a compact way. So yeah, it's really interesting how we've applied judgments around, if you're this age, you're going to be like this, and if you're this age, you're going to be like that. And what I've just said then is a judgment, right?
Correct.
And,
Yeah.
and it could be construed as ageist.
Yes.
Like everything. So it's all, I think the moral of the story is check out the backgrounds, the skills, the experience, do references, all the things, because maybe the young little genius is the one that should do the heart surgery.
Yeah, true. Absolutely.
Maybe.
Absolutely. But I definitely know who will beat me at tennis if we're going to talk about sport. And that's not the 80-year-old that's been playing 80 years. It's the 25-year-old, because he'll run rings, 80-year-old might have a better quality shot, but he's just not going to last the distance. So it just depends.
And how old are you when you're too old to lead? We've got some issues in the US at the moment in terms of leadership, right? How old are you when you're too old to lead?
Too old to lead.
That's a good topic.
And that's a case of where you need to be open-minded and not set in your way of thinking that one person could be okay and another person might not be okay, and somebody else, there's differences, and that's why we have diversity as well. So you can't be set in your ways to think only this person, only young people know technology, and because there might be some old people that are really good at technology, so it's really keeping an open mind, right?
Yeah, 100%. It's about moving the prejudice and assessing each human at face value and considering all the factors, not just age. Age might be one component, but yeah, looking at it holistically.
And we're not very good at that. None of us are. We're not very good at that.
No, we're almost one-track mind.
Yeah.
And I think the key is, when assessing whether or not someone is right or wrong for the role or for whatever it is that you're looking at, you got to ask questions. And you got to ask questions, do your research, and look at past behaviors, because past behaviors are a predictor of future behaviors in a lot of cases. So look at the examples, and not just take everything off face value. There's more to than that.
And speaking of questions, anyone that asked probably the better questions I've ever heard across podcasting and in recruitment would be you, Judith, wouldn't it? Really, I mean, a recruiter is the best person for diagnosis and questioning. I mean, your role is just constantly in discovery, and the better questions get the better answers, right?
Well, I have this theory: if I'm not totally clear about it, I keep asking. If they haven't answered the question fully, I keep asking, and if it doesn't make sense to me, I keep probing. If somebody tells me they can't do something, or this can't be done, and it doesn't make sense to me, I have to have more information.
She does it to me all the time, Luke.
When you two are both just sort of going semi off topic here, but I take it we can talk about anything on this
about
podcast.
Anything.
But I mean, and ladies, in your 20s to 30s, when you were both dating, I'm just wondering who would have asked the most questions on the date.
Oh, that's very good. Oh, that's very good.
I think I still ask a lot of questions. I find I ask more questions of others than they ask of me, and that's one of the things I just do and have always done. So consequently, I get to know a lot about other people, and they don't often get to know a lot about me, unless they're also good at asking questions.
Very strategic. I mean, look,
it's not strategic. It's just I like asking questions. I just like asking questions.
Similar to a job interview, really. I mean, it's getting to know the candidate, identifying whether or not they're a good product fit, so to speak. And yeah,
I had two issues, two things that were on the focus back then. Ethics and ambition. So I needed to know the person was ethical and that they had ambition. And so those were the, and I remember one time my sister sent my niece over. She was, probably about 18 or 19, sent her over here for me to look after her for vacation. And she was dating some cowboy, as my sister said. She's dating this cowboy, and I want you to sort her out. Come over, and I'm like going, you picked the wrong person. We'll be taking her out to the pubs and the anyway. We took her out. We had a great time. And the last day, I thought, oh my God, my sister thinks that I'm going to have to, change her perception, because she was going to veterinarian school, and she's a very smart girl, and she didn't want her to get derailed. And so anyway, I just said to her, I said, oh, and I heard you've got this new boyfriend and he's a cowboy. Oh, yes, he's so cute. No, I just like him so much. And I go, well, what does he do? And she goes, well, he works at the gas station pumping gas. So, they're 17. And I said, look, at the end of the day, there is absolutely nothing wrong with anybody who's pumping gas, but does he want to own the gas station? And she goes, oh, I don't know. Anyway, she broke up with him 2 weeks later, and I was the hero.
Yeah, she broke up with him because the answer he said was no. I'm just having to work here for 40 years and retire and get my severance.
And there's nothing wrong with that, right?
There's not. But it's just subjective and down to the individual and what you want. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you on that, Judith. I don't want to be a woman that's just in a gas station for 40 years. I mean, that wouldn't really inspire or motivate me, and our relationship would just end regardless of how gorgeous she is. But yeah, but some people, yeah, I mean, like-minded, right? Like it's law of attraction. You often find partnerships, they're cut from the same cloth generally. You very rarely see, a $1 billion recording artist like Rihanna dating someone like me who earns maybe $100,000 a year. That's just not going to happen. I mean,
there's hope for you yet.
There is hope, but it's pretty real there. Yeah.
I don't know. Taylor's in town.
Is she in town?
Tay-Tay's in town.
Is Tay-Tay in town? What do you mean, in Australia or in Wellington?
In Melbourne.
Oh, okay. Oh, I thought you were in Hobart for. Oh.
No, I am in Tasmania, but Christina's in Melbourne.
I'm close to Melbourne.
Well, she got a lot of hype on that social media. I still haven't gone deep enough, but apart from I know that she's dating the guy from the Chiefs who played at the Super Bowl, but there was also a deeper meme there, and I haven't gone into it, but she's getting a lot of clout. Not that she needs it, but everywhere you go online is all about whatever she's
a very successful businesswoman.
I got it. There is one thing about this though, because there was, and this isn't one of our subjects, but seeing that we brought up Taylor,
she's getting more attention now.
I know. But Harvard has a subject that you can take at Harvard just on Taylor Swift. Now, I'm sorry, but that just brought Ivy League, to me, thinking they're the best, down about 5 pegs. Because
I agree. Yeah.
Seriously,
well, depending on what the subject matter is. I mean, if it's a case study and looking into
how she's been,
from her brand awareness to talent to her business and strategy and everything, and it gets to the nitty gritty, then sure.
Yeah. But that should be part of their marketing courses. Their marketing, part of because there's more than Taylor that has done well within marketing. You think, come on, is there not a better?
But maybe Tay-Tay's the exception to the rule, though. I mean, I haven't looked into the depths, so I can't comment on it. But maybe they've chosen her for a very specific reason.
Is it a course, or is it a course? Is it an actual diploma or a degree or a subject?
You get a credit. It's a course you get a credit for.
I'm actually keen to take this course now that you mentioned it, Judith, and I'm also keen. As part of the course, do I get to get one-on-one Zooms with Tay-Tay?
Yeah. See, I think
so.
it's a strategy to get more people to study. Maybe it's a strategy to get more people to go to Harvard, although I would have thought people would want to go to Harvard anyway.
You know what? This is probably a podcast in itself. We'll have a Tay-Tay podcast. but it's really kind of like, what are we teaching the people coming up, that it's important, because only so many people are great singers,
Great business people,
present well. There's only so many people that are ever in their whole life going to get anywhere near what she's gotten. So therefore, what are we teaching? How many likes to get on social media? How to get, like, what are the learnings from it? Because you've got to have a talent, a really good talent, and not just a talent, the brand and everything else that goes with it, to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm not sure. What the situation. We just lost Luke.
We did.
No, I'm still with you. Don't worry. No, I was just going to say, Judith, I can do can run a little longer. It's just that I'm trying to find a silent area because I'm getting my carpets cleaned, and it sounds like a rodeo in Taylor Swift's hometown.
But we can't hear anything, so keep chatting.
Oh, great. Okay, yeah, we'll keep going. Yeah,
we'll keep going.
Rolling. But yeah, very very great topic. And to conclude, I'd definitely like to sign up to that Tay-Tay course.
So we jump to our last little topic, the right to disconnect.
That's exactly right. So basically, bosses could soon be fined if they keep contacting workers after hours under new laws. The new laws will allow workers to approach the Fair Work Commission if they feel they have been inappropriately and repeatedly contacted by employers and managers outside of work hours. So should there be fines for being contacted outside of work hours? What do you guys think about this one?
This is a complex.
That's a good topic.
This is a complex one. I think there's lots and lots of facets to this, and it's one extreme is it's open to abuse, and the other extreme is that there are people that are being taken advantage of. There are some jobs and some roles, and people aren't being paid appropriately to be on call. But if you're in a job that you're expected to be on call, then you should be being paid to be on call, and you should be on call, and you can't complain about being on call. But I think part of it's also boundary management. If your boss chooses to write you an email at 2 a.m, that doesn't mean you have to respond. Turn your notifications off. You don't have to respond until, unless you're in a job that requires immediate reactions. But for most of us in jobs, that's up to us to manage our own technology and our own notifications and our own kind of noisiness of our technology, and respond when it's appropriate to respond. But that's for us to manage. We've got to take some responsibility there.
What do you think, Luke?
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. And also I think there's an element of it's like you said, so many facets. I'm just trying to sort of break them down in my mind, obviously thinking out loud here. But the biggest thing is also down to, how passionate are you about your role? For example, how passionate are you about your role? If you live and breathe your role, and I'm trying to think of a case scenario here. Let's say I'm aiming to be the CEO of Saatchi & Saatchi, an advertising firm, as a case scenario, hypothetically. I mean, I don't think I'll get there with my current CV, but anyhow. But like, if I am that hungry and my reporting manager is reaching out to me late in the evenings on a topic of something it could further my development on, or need a task to be done, I mean, I'm going to jump at the opportunity, right? And it's also dependent on whether or not I've got a family, or if I'm single, or if I've got the time to do that. But if I'm single and I've got no other commitments and I'm trying to get to the CEO level, if he's reaching out at 9:30 at night, I'm going to be well received on that, versus the person that works a 9 to 5 in their contract and their boss is asking them to complete a task by 8 a.m. and sending an email at 7. That's not realistic. And that person that doesn't necessarily maybe like their 9 to 5, it's just there's going to be a different way of interpreting it. So yeah, like you said, many facets, and it's how you look at it.
Yeah. Yeah,
I agree.
And
Early on in
then
my-
sorry, to your question about whether or not there should be fines. I think in certain scenarios you could enforce a fine, and it depends on the context and the matter and how they've reached out to you, and if it's going on for a long period of time. It could be like a 3-strike rule, right? The employees turned around and said, "Hey, look, mister, can you not reach out at that hour? And I'm not actually contractually obliged to deliver at this time." And so therefore, if he keeps going on the third, there could be a fine. So yeah.
Let's go back to your advertising agency scenario, because I think that's a really good scenario, because that's one industry where I hear frequently from young execs that industry does tend to use and abuse their young talent, and they are put on stupid deadlines, and they're working round the clock, and they're not being paid appropriately for what they're doing. And there are a few industries like that. I agree wholeheartedly with your initial comment, Luke, because that's what I was when I was a young thing coming through. I was working 7 days. I was in the office at 7. I was putting in the hard yards because I wanted to get noticed. I wanted to get ahead. But at some point, if you're not being paid appropriately for that level of contribution, then there's obviously something that's wrong there. And then that comes down to the conversations that you were just, you need to have a conversation, you need to negotiate, you need to speak up. Because it's complex.
I look at it from, here's another thing that employers are going to have to try to dissect. And then as far as whatever happened to responsibility, and why can't it be looked at from a more of an educational point of view to say to employers, your productivity increases by X% if your employees have a better work-life balance. And so things like contacting them after hours and on the weekend is actually going to go against your productivity, and sort of trying to go down more that educational path, because there will be people who will also take advantage of this as far as being upset with their employer. They contacted me at 5:45. But the other question, as a past employer, I never contacted anybody on the, like, the only time you contact somebody is if you needed something from
emergency, urgent,
or because maybe they didn't put notes in the system like they were supposed to, and you had to follow up and get clarification because you didn't really want to do it. Now, I know our industry was a lot different than a lot of industries that are having these issues, and there must be an issue for this to be taken to this level. But I just wonder whether or not we're looking at it all too long, and how many more rules and regulations are we going to have? It's kind of like,
it starts to get very political, doesn't it?
It does.
I mean,
like,
and look, if there's blackmailing involved, certain industries that I know are super competitive, if someone's working at, PwC, Ernst & Young, all those big law firms, and if the managers are starting to create a narrative around saying, in the sense of, oh, hey, look, well, old Joe or Susie's doing way more hours than you and really showing her grind. Obviously, I'm going to promote her. If you're clocking off, Wayne or Sarah, at 9 to 5, how passionate really are you to climb the ladder? So there's certain elements where I think
shaming,
there does have to be sort of pretty set rules and regulations around it, because it can get quite cunning because you look at it from a perspective of the partner at the firm. I mean, they're just breeding a competitive ground, right? And everyone's just fighting like ants to get to the top. So they're like, oh yeah, well, I'm going to work till midnight then. If Sarah's, so I think it's, there's go.
and input doesn't correlate to output or productivity. Just because you're there for 12 or 14 hours doesn't mean you're actually getting good stuff done.
Yeah, that's a good point too,
your focus is off. And these are the programs that, instead of to be legislated, they should be developed through the HR areas of these organizations. And they should be putting out, like, and I know there are a few companies that do have a no contact between certain hours. I know it happens in France and Paris. They have that, you can't contact.
Teachers had it put into their awards too, I think. because they were
And
getting
and
contacted
I get
afterward.
that. Yeah, I get that is, but it's kind of like there's just so many different, and because really, if someone is contacting somebody a lot after hours or on the weekends, then that could also fall into bullying. So there's other things that,
That's true too. Yeah, I mean, how do you define bullying? And there's definitely workplace bullying, and what's the criteria on bullying? I mean, look, if someone's got a deadline to meet and they haven't met the deadline, like, yeah, you need to be grinding till 10 or 12 or until the deadline's met, right?
We've
Because
all
that's
done it.
down to your JD and what you need to deliver in that role. But if you've delivered in your role and your manager just consistently keeps reaching out and like, i.e. trying to further your workload or increase your capacity and not paying you for it, then yeah, that could fall under the bullying and therefore warrant a fine.
yeah.
Well, first a conversation, I hope, before it gets to.
Well,
Yeah.
I remember one time I went to California, and there was this place called Carlsbad, and they had this beach there, and there were these two huge big signs with about 50 different things you can't do on the beach. And my husband and I were sort of sitting there reading, and I'm going, why don't they just put one sentence what we can do? Because they got all these rules and regulations. It's like, oh my God.
You're only allowed to do breathing.
That's right. Go sit on the sand, and that's it. Well, hey, I think we've come to our time, and we've covered some good subjects. One subject that I think we want to cover next time, Christina, is triggered. I'm like
Yes, everybody's being triggered by everything at the moment, so that's a good one.
So stay tuned for our next episode where we're going to talk about triggered and what we're triggered. I'm triggered by the word triggered. So we'll do that. So thank you so much, Luke, and everybody should watch the Luke Farr show. It's fantastic. And
thank you for plugging that, Judith. And audience, I did not pay her a fee to say that. Just a caveat.
No, we love it, and we love having you on. And thanks for being one of our pop-in guests. I'm sure we'll have many more conversations this year.
Yeah, hey, thanks, guys. Thank you so much.
Luke.
Appreciate coming on the show. Love what you're doing. Love the insights that you're sharing, and great conversations, and look forward to many more in 2024.
Thanks.
Wonderful.
Thanks. See you later. Bye.
Thanks, guys. See ya. Bye.
For more information about Every Step and our guests, head to everysteppodcast.com. To be notified of new podcasts, please subscribe via your favourite listening platform. And of course, follow us on social media and direct message us to share your ideas about guests or topics.